Okay, well, I'll go ahead and get started, and if other people come in, that'll be fine. Welcome to tonight's program, Food Bank of Lincoln, a story of food waste, prevention, and beyond. My name is Peggy Apthorpe, and I'm currently working as an AmeriCorps with Conservation Nebraska. Many of you are familiar with Conservation Nebraska. We're a statewide nonprofit that's dedicated to keeping our natural resources healthy. Recently, we have started a new program called Our Legacy Nebraska that is dealing with environmental justice issues, including things like food security, food deserts, access to healthy food, etc. So we are really happy that Michaella Kumke has agreed to help us out by doing a program tonight. Before I introduce Michaella, I'll cover a few housekeeping items. Your cameras are off and you are muted. If you would put your questions or comments in the Q&A or the chat, we would really appreciate that. And then we will have a short poll at the end of the program. It's really helpful to us if you complete that. It helps with funding and planning kinds of issues. So it's my pleasure to introduce Michaella Kumke. Michaella is the president and CEO of the food bank alongside a team of 32 colleagues. I need to read this, I'm sorry. You're a very accomplished person, and when I was reading it, I thought, man, she is really busy as well. Her food bank career began in 2015, first as communications director, then as community engagement director, before being named president and CEO in May of 2021. Her 20 plus years of nonprofit experience includes work in educational broadcasting, healthcare, and early childhood development. Michaella is a community volunteer who currently serves on the City of Lincoln's Age-Friendly Lincoln Committee, the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, and the Bryan Medical Center Board of Trustees. So I'm not sure how you keep up with all of that, but we really appreciate your being here tonight. So thank you. I'll turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Peggy, and thanks for the introduction and the opportunity to speak with all of you this evening about the Food Bank of Lincoln. This will be an overview and also provide some context about issues related to conservation, food waste, which is the origination of food banking. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And as Peggy mentioned, welcome any questions that may come up throughout the program. I'm going to switch over here to share my slides. So give me a moment, please. Okay. So for a lot of folks, the Food Bank of Lincoln is something familiar to them, and for others, it may be a brand new concept. We are based here in Lincoln, Nebraska, but our service area, as you can see, I'm going to skip around a little bit. We actually serve 16 counties in Southeast Nebraska. That's news to some folks. It's a 9,200 square mile service area, and the remaining 77 counties in Nebraska are served by the Food Bank for the Heartland. They're based in Omaha, and together we serve all 93 counties in the state of Nebraska, and Food Bank for the Heartland actually serves 16 counties in western Iowa as well. Across the state, when we look at the number of food insecure neighbors, that's folks who don't have consistent or reliable access to enough food to lead an active and healthy life. That number of Nebraskans is about 3 times more than the record-breaking attendance at Volleyball Day in Nebraska last August. And so like to kind of give this visual one because we're extremely proud of the Husker volleyball team, but also to give the visual of imagine how packed that stadium was for that special day. And if you can imagine that being 3 times full, that's the number of our neighbors here in Nebraska who face hunger and food insecurity. I mentioned our service area, and along with that service area, we are a member of the Feeding America Network. That's the national, I joke and say it's the mothership of food banking. Feeding America represents 200 food banks from across the country and Puerto Rico. It also includes 60,000 food programs and pantries. And we have some of those partner agencies right here in our service area. Feeding America also provides us with data, an annual report called Map the Meal Gap. That report was actually just released for the 2024 year last week. And unfortunately, the numbers did not move in a positive direction. We went from 1 in 10 of our neighbors being food insecure to 1 in 7 of our neighbors, including 1 in 5 kids. I do want to call out that the data reflects information from 2022, although it is the 2024 report. It takes 2 years for all of that data to be analyzed and fact-checked. So what I have told people is this isn't necessarily shocking to my colleagues and I here at the food bank or our partner agency representatives, because we have felt this. We have felt the need rising. We have felt the demand among our neighbors, and we have seen, of course, with factors including inflation, but also the adjustments of federal food program support either going away or being reduced. That's where why we see some of these numbers creeping back up. So in the last fiscal year, and when we're about to close another fiscal year, but I'll give you numbers based on what we have right now. Fiscal year 2023, we connected neighbors to more than 10.2 million meals, and nearly 1 million alone were specific to our child hunger programs. When we look at the households served, you can see just what we're talking about with this incline or increase rather in need. When we look back to pre-pandemic years, that need was still considerably high, and now we're climbing well beyond those numbers. How we do our work, one of the major ways is through mobile food distributions. And what that looks like is the food bank staff loading up either a refrigerated box truck or our semi and driving to destinations across our service area. You can see that we make visits to 25 rural communities every month to distribute food. We also conduct food distributions, these mobile food distributions right here in Lincoln, including off our parking lot on the first and third Fridays of every month. And we just hosted that most recent one here last Friday, and we welcomed more than 930 neighbors in that about 2 hours of the distribution, or 90 minutes really of that distribution. And that still kind of blows my mind, to be perfectly honest. We've seen 1,000+ households served in that time. And what is so difficult for me still, 9 years into working at the food bank, is that pre-pandemic, a really big food distribution for us would have rubbed up against 300 households served. And that's pretty standard now. Another way that we get food to neighbors is through Lincoln Fresh. This is one of our newer-ish programs, started back in 2018, and it was the catalyst for this program was research that Community Health Endowment here in Lincoln did alongside with the University of Nebraska Lincoln, and looked at a heat map of the community of Lincoln and where there was access disparity, looking at a number of factors, including birth rates, grocery store locations, and really looking at the overall health of our community. So one of the outcomes of having that information resulted in the launch of this Lincoln Fresh program. And what it is us loading up a designated truck to visit 14 different sites where we're distributing free produce to everybody who visits. We know that for a stronger and healthier community, that begins with the types of foods that go in to our bodies, and that they have an impact not only on physical health, but our mental health as well. And so during our last season, this is a seasonal program from about March to about November, you can see that we served 31,090 people and nearly 300,000 pounds of produce. 48 varieties, we say it was everything from avocados to zucchini and a lot of other flavors in between. Hometown Fresh is a spinoff of the Lincoln Fresh program. Lincoln Fresh was wildly successful and really focused, like I said, on the Lincoln community because it was based on research from Lincoln. Hometown Fresh is a truck and trailer unit that we take. It's a walk-through mobile pantry, so it provides a more private environment for individuals to get food support. So we'll go to about 9 different rural communities in our Southeast Nebraska service area. And the driver will set up that trailer and we work with volunteers to welcome individuals primarily focused on our aging population in rural communities as the target audience for this program. Also, not exclusive to that group, but that is the key population intended for this program. We'll go into some communities with this program and we may only serve 30 or 40 individuals, but we have at least one instance where that's half the town's population. And so we know that this program is incredibly important for folks, excuse me, who are accessing the services and food that we provide through these stops. So I'm going to go back one more minute here on this one. So, you know, when we're looking at mobile food distributions where we're serving 700, 800, 900 people or even 1,000, households, and then we think about something like Hometown Fresh where there's 30, 40, 50, you know, some people could ask, well, is it worth it? Why would you do something that is so low in numbers? And we always come back to, well, if your family or if you were one of those households in that low served population, then it would feel pretty monumental to have that visit. And so it's not always about the big numbers, but it's about having big impact. Child hunger programs is often the gateway for folks in thinking about food banking because they're familiar with things like the backpack program. Our backpack program started almost 20 years ago. It will be 20 years next school year that we began that program at Clinton Elementary School, a Title I school here in Lincoln, and provided 50 food-filled bags to 50 children at that school. And 20 years later, we are now partnered with more than 110 schools across our service area and serving more than 6,500 children and their families per month. Home deliveries is something that started out of the pandemic in partnership with United Way and DoorDash. We identified homebound individuals that were having challenges with accessing food, of course. And there's a short screening process for this. And we have volunteers lined up who pack these bags each week, and then another group of volunteers who help us deliver directly to the porches of these neighbors who are homebound. We also work with the federal government to sponsor or manage various programs, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, the Commodity Supplemental Food Program that's targeted, of course, for neighbors 60 and older, and the Summer Food Service Program, free breakfast and lunch. We're getting ready. We have 26 sites that we sponsor for that program. Right now, those are all sites in the Lincoln community, but we're looking to see if we can expand to serve some of our rural population through this program in coming years. Additionally, on the topic of summer food, since the timing is just right with that, we have school food markets and summer backpack deliveries that will happen this summer as well. There was also big news earlier this spring when the governor reversed his decision about summer EBT, which is a spinoff of the SNAP benefit program. But summer EBT is specific to serving children who are school age and eligible for this program. It provides $40 per month per child for 3 months of the summer. The financial resources loaded on a card that they can then use at a partnering retail location to get food that they need this summer. That's critical for our rural service area, again, where food deserts are more prevalent. We talked a little bit about those 60,000 program sites and pantries across the Feeding America network, which is nationwide. But right here in Southeast Nebraska, we work with 45 different nonprofit agencies to help put food into our neighbors' hands. We couldn't do this work to the extent or to impact that we do without our partner agencies. So this is some heavy lifting that those agencies help us do as well. And that would be locations like the Center for People or People City Mission, Salvation Army, another big partner. So when we talk about disaster response, they are first responders to such things like the recent tornadoes and now flooding. Red Cross and Salvation Army will be there first, and we provide the long-term recovery support for individuals and families. But we work closely with all of those agencies on either a piece of their overall programming, such as the food pantries or hot meals. People often wonder, where does our food come from? And so this is a look at those sources, and we would call your attention to the food purchasing changes over the years. Of course, some of the food purchasing that we have done has been possible because of funding like ARPA dollars, American Rescue Plan Act dollars, and also a swell of donations that we received, fortunately, due to the unfortunate circumstance of the global pandemic. We cannot, as the charitable food system, sustain these levels of purchasing. Unfortunately, shiny objects fade, and people don't always continue to see the persistent need as being enough of a draw. But the food bank has lasted for more than 40 years, and we will continue to be here for our neighbors. But what this calls us to do is to advocate to the government and to businesses, and to work in partnership and collaboration with other manufacturers, wholesalers, and retail partners to get the donated food items to help us close some of that gap and reduce the food purchasing that is necessary to do our work. Again, when you think about 10.2 million meals connected, that's requires a lot of food sourcing to make that happen. And now for just a little bit of the history, and this is directly connected to conservation. Feeding America began because John Van Hingel in Phoenix, Arizona, spoke to a woman, a single mom, who he observed was digging through the trash. She suggested there must be a better way that this food not go to waste, that we could, that an idea was birthed there, that, like a bank, like a financial institution, could food be collected and then redistributed in a way that would reduce the waste and support the need that existed. And so John Van Hengel in the 60s and into the 70s continued to build on that idea. And today, Feeding America is the nation's largest food rescue organization, as well as the nation's largest hunger relief organization. So this is kind of the nuts and bolts of how that food rescue works. So we have a food sourcing director on our team who is in constant communication with various retail partners locally and across our service area to look at how could we take what you as a retailer need to turn over on your shelves. Maybe it's, and not just retailers, but farmers that have excess, excuse me, or restaurants and other donors. We have corporate businesses that provide fresh produce to their employees, and sometimes they overpurchased. And so we establish partnerships to get that food into our facility so that we can either pick it up or it gets delivered. Then we sort through it to make sure that it is food safe for consumption. First and foremost, and also that there is a level of dignity. Sometimes there is food that comes in that is technically safe to eat, but it may not be, the packaging may be so mangled that it doesn't provide dignity to the neighbors that we're serving. So we try to be cognizant of that as well. But our volunteers are all trained in these various food dating requirements according to the USDA, as well as that dignity piece. And they're helping us sort and repack for various programs or for partner agency selection. And then we distribute that food right away. Our drivers and distribution center staff working very quickly and very closely with partners to make sure that the most food that comes into our doors has a chance of getting back out quickly and into the hands of folks who need it in a timely fashion. Of course, this is keeping massive amounts of food from ending up in landfills. So we've been talking a little bit about that retail rescue program, and just want to call out that more than 2 million pounds of food rescued from retail partners that would otherwise end up in the landfill. We're able to redistribute that. Not 100% of that food, as you'll see in the next slide, but a significant amount. And so when we look at what we have actually had to discard, when we look at 10.2 million pounds connected or distributed, only, and I think 13,000 is a large number personally, but not in comparison to the overall. But 13,614 pounds of trash. Right now, we don't have a calculation of what part of those 13,614 pounds is true trash and what amount is compost, because we do have composting programs with our refuse company, and also a couple of farmers that can use our food waste to feed livestock. So that's a little bit about the food waste prevention and of course all of our programs that address the need today. Another way that we address food insecurity is by looking at the root causes of poverty. And we call this line shortening work, meaning our goal is to reduce the total number of folks who need to show up in our mobile food distribution lines or in our program lines by getting at the root cause of poverty and food insecurity. And so programs like Bridges Out of Poverty and Getting Ahead and a Just Getting By world are organized conversations that educate, inspire, and support the attendees who, in one audience, it's folks who have are currently experiencing that instability due to poverty. And another audience is policymakers and decision makers, business managers that may not realize the unintended challenges that we create when we're only solving problems with a middle-class mindset. If we're not looking at some of the barriers and hurdles that come from long-standing systemic or rather structures that are middle class or wealthy class mindset or organized. And of course, the last big area of our work that makes so much of it possible is our volunteers. It is astonishing to me that more than 40,000 hours have been donated by nearly 9,000 volunteers just in the last year alone. And that ends up saving the food bank about $1 million or more that we would pay for labor. And so volunteers absolutely help us keep our doors open and our neighbors fed. So that is kind of the overview. I'm going to stop my sharing now, and hopefully there are questions.
Yeah, if anybody has questions, please put them in the Q&A or the chat. And we can wait here for a minute while you do that. I had a couple, I guess, that you mentioned that you purchased that you're purchasing more now than you did in the past, but is that because the demand is increasing? I mean, has the economy had something to do with that?
Sorry, could you say that one more time for me, please, Peggy?
Well, you mentioned you are purchasing more food than you did in past years, like 46% now.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered if that had to do with you have more of a demand for food and if the economy is impacting it.
Yes, so I would say it's all of those factors. Yes, there is increased demand. When we think about those statistics, where last year meal gap number suggested that 1 in 10 of our neighbors was food insecure, and then this year's information shows us that 1 in 7 is now food insecure. So that need has increased. At the same time, retail partners in particular got smarter during pandemic with their own purchasing, right? And so what they had in excess to donate, that went down. And additionally, we've seen changes over the past several years from different USDA programs like the Emergency Food Assistance Program. Now there's commitments where we expect that to go up, but we haven't quite right-sided that just yet. So it's, and the cost of food. You mentioned inflation as well, and just economics, right? I mean, anybody who's paying attention knows that when you go to the grocery store, nobody's dollar is going as far as it once did. Part of that meal gap, the meal gap report tells us that the cost per meal in Nebraska is now $3.96, which went up 11% from last year alone. And so we're just seeing more and more individuals who are really challenged to make their dollars go farther. As a result, we're needing to purchase more to meet that need. And also because the donations, like I said, the retail and other wholesalers have gotten a little smarter about their own production. And so it, unfortunately, dialed back on what they donate, but we keep working on that to educate them.
Well, I'll go ahead and read the question from Beth. Is there any feedback from the users regarding, oops, I better get back in there. Okay, I lost the question. Okay. Is there any feedback from users regarding types of food available, amount of food, etc.?
Thank you, Beth. That's a great question. So right now, we are organizing at the food bank for more neighbor engagement, which is our way. We call the folks who we serve our neighbors. They're not clients, they're not customers.
Yeah.
They are truly our neighbors. And so we're getting organized for neighbor engagement feedback so that we have a better, more precise data-driven response to this. Anecdotally, what I can tell you is fresh produce is the most often desired and demanded product that we have. We've seen at that Lincoln Fresh program, we've seen 70% increase in traffic to that program 1 year to the next. We hear frequently from immigrant, our new American neighbors that fresh produce is familiar. Some of our American practices are not, canned food is kind of confusing for some populations. Fresh produce also supports health, community, physical health, mental health. And so we have some of that anecdotal information right now, but we're organizing to get better information. I will also share that we've had some conversations with various cultural populations to better understand and provide different types of foods such as halal meats, and also different ethnic types of foods. So we do want to be more culturally affirming and familiar to folks as well.
Okay. Now Beth says excellent work, but thank you. She also had another question. Well, she said, I love that there are composting and opportunities for farmers to utilize what previously would be thrown away. And I was going to ask that too. Do you do composting? I know that would be. Oh, do you? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we work with a refuse company that takes both trash and has separate composting bins that we keep. And we do work with a couple of small farmers because honestly, we don't have a tremendous amount of waste, but there are a couple of small farm setups that will take some of our food occasionally and feed that to chickens or hogs and that type of thing. So yeah, we are very mindful. Our operations director, his name is Jason Helgren, and he might have the world's longest arms because he can hug a tree like nobody's business. And I love that about him. He's very mindful about recycling the materials that we choose and making sure that we're being environmentally friendly as possible.
That's great. Are there any other questions here no open questions? Well, we can weigh in. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say there is one more area that I didn't really include in the presentation, but I think is worth mentioning. I can see that some of the attendees who are joining us live tonight, and I know that I'm speaking a little bit to the choir because I recognize some of these names as some of our very best volunteers. So thank you all. You know who you are. But I want to call out, if you don't know, if you're not familiar, the Food Bank of Lincoln moved into a new facility 2 years ago in May. And this facility was designed by Sinclair Hilly and built by BIC Construction. And there are components of our design that are green minded. Unfortunately, we don't have solar panels. That was something that we looked at and were informed it wasn't quite going to work for us. But there are other things like motion sensor lights, like our water, the system that catches our water, and low flow toilets and things like that. So some of those details that we could implement, we did. And I would add that in our freezer and cooler, we have a system that slows down the aging of our produce so that the gases that are released, it extends the life of the fruits and vegetables a little bit longer so that it gives us a little more time to get those items out. So there are some of those environmentally friendly mechanics built into the design.
Yes, and I will say I had the opportunity to visit, and it's very impressive, a very impressive facility. And we're thinking about trying to set up a tour for the public sometime in the late summer or maybe early fall. But it's a beautiful facility. You're so lucky.
We are, and we know
Yeah.
that, and I hope folks who support our work understand just how grateful we are. Peggy, I will say, for anybody who just can't wait until that tour gets
Yeah,
organized and is available to join us next Thursday, which is Give to Lincoln Day, we are
Oh, yeah.
hosting an open house from 11
Oh,
a.m. to 1 p.m. open to the public. There
okay.
is no requirement to make a donation as part of the Give to Lincoln Day, but we absolutely won't turn you down if you decide to do that.
Wonderful. So that's a good way to do it. I think I have a couple more. Oh, a couple more questions from Charlene. If someone wants to donate fresh food like tomatoes and cucumbers from their own garden, how do they go about that?
Thank you for asking, Charlene. I know Char.
Yeah.
So yes, backyard farmers. If you're growing and you got a little aggressive, you can donate directly at the Food Bank of Lincoln. We also have an annual partnership with Campbell's Nurseries, those 2 locations in Lincoln that should be restarting anytime here. I also see Joe Sheets on the call, member of Southwood Lutheran, and they are another example of an organization at the church that has a big garden, and part of their garden is designated specifically to help us at the Food Bank of Lincoln.
Hmm.
And so anybody who's growing fresh fruits and vegetables, please do think of the food bank if you're wondering what to do with your excess. And if you can get it to us, we will get it into the hands of neighbors who need it.
Okay, do have a question from Joe Sheets. Do you have recommendations for ensuring leftover prepared food from events don't go to waste? I work at a large church and we frequently have large amounts of leftovers from catered meals, which doesn't necessarily fall within something the food bank could use. Are there any agencies you would recommend?
Yes, so because I just mentioned, and I know Joe, you're in the
Yeah.
Lincoln area, we frequently direct folks to Matt Talbot Kitchen and Outreach as one of
Okay.
those locations. They are generally able to accept food that is extra from an event. Occasionally the People's City Mission is able to do that as well. And so those are kind of in Lincoln where we
Yeah.
typically direct, because as Joe mentioned, we do not handle warmed or prepared food. We don't have the proper equipment for all of that. But we try to let people know if we can't do it, here's who we would point you to. So Matt Talbot, Kitchen and Outreach, and the People's City Mission.
Those are good ideas, good suggestions. Okay, think I think we're okay. Sarah, did you see a question that wasn't answered? We have Sarah McLean's operating the technical part. Thankfully, we appreciate that, but I don't see any that haven't been answered. We do have a poll, and I think we can put that up. But Michaella, this has been an excellent presentation. I really appreciate your taking the time, and we will have it on YouTube. So that people who weren't able to attend tonight can view it, or if people want to show it at different groups or so forth. Oh yeah, here's the survey. That would be appreciated. And do you have any final words you'd like to give to us? Give to
I would
Lincoln
just,
Day.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea to have an open house there though.
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to say thanks again to you and to Sarah and to Fabian when you and Fabian both came out.
Yeah.
And to all the folks on the call and who may be tuning in later. Really and truly, the Food Bank of Lincoln cannot do the work that it does without people willing to understand the need and to respond to the need and to engage in the work involved, whether that's through funds, food, or service. And so just want to thank you for all of that. I hope nobody's disappointed that it looks like we'll be ending about 20 minutes early. It's a gorgeous day. So
Yeah.
Again, I don't think you'll be too upset at me, but if you are, please do find me at lincolnfoodbank.org and look for more of what the food bank is doing. Follow us on social. Please help us share the word, because advocacy and that education is also extremely important.
Yeah. And I think Sarah put up there, your website is lincolnfoodbank.org, right? Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Let me double check. These are, okay, I think we got everybody's questions, and good luck with your event on Tuesday and with Give to Lincoln Day.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Have a
thank
good
you.
evening, all.